What is the butterfly effect event of your life? Is it supposed to be good effects? I guess this kind of counts as good. When I was around 14-15, my mom needed to go to the pharmacy to pick up my brother's medication before it closed. At that time my oldest sister would always drive. Dad had the car for work, and whenever she drove, both my brother and myself would go with her. But for some reason this time I felt like I needed to stay home. My mom even said I should stay home. This was weird for me because I would be at home completely alone and I hated that. But I couldn't bring myself to walk out the door. So I sat down on the couch and waited for them to come home. And waited. My sister's boyfriend came flying in the door and asked where she was, then ran back out when I told him. Then my dad called me and asked who else was home. And he hung up. Then my grandparents came to the house. All the while I still had no clue what was going on. There was an accident about 15 minutes from my house. The car hit a tree and rolled 3 times. My mom was rushed to the hospital. The entire passenger side of the car was crushed in and my mom somehow managed to unbuckle her seatbelt and throw herself on top of my sister who wasn't wearing a seatbelt and had her window open. My mom's foot was completely detached from her ankle, held on by screws now. Her hand went out the window and her fingers were grinded down by the pavement. She has a nub for an index finger and they had to take skin and regraft it around her other fingers. My brother always sat on the driver's side. He came out with a black eye. My sister was in shock and had whiplash, but no other injuries. I always sat on the passenger side in the back seat. I always wear my seat belt. That was the side completely crushed in. I would have died that night. I know that. But changing one thing means that I am still here. Deciding to work out with my friend at the gym one day my senior year of college. My friend's normal gym partner couldn't go with him, so he asked me, and I decided to go. We were talking about jobs for after we graduate, and he mentioned how in his future he'd like to maybe work in Europe at some point. That thought had never even crossed my mind before. But when I got home I thought that also may be an interesting idea. I looked up popular jobs abroad and decided to apply for a job as an English language assistant in Spain. The program that I had applied for had their deadline that day that I had went to the gym, was accepted, ended up loving the job, and I am still living in Spain 2 years later. Don't know what I'd be doing if I had never said yes to going to the gym that day with my friend. Girl I met in high school was sitting in a corner at lunch crying. I asked her what was wrong and she told me her mom doesn't feed her at home and refuses to give her lunch money for school. I shared my lunch with her from that day forward. 10 years later and we now have a family together. We couldn't be happier. Years ago my Minecraft buddy told me to download Skype, so I did. I placed my location to Micronesia just because it sounded random and my brother saw that and laughed. WTF is Micronesia? He did Google search and got interested in that place. Maybe year after that he booked flight to Micronesia Islands where he met girl who was also Finnish. Like what are the odds? After that they straighted dating and 2 years ago they got married. I don't remember that Minecraft friend's name anymore, but Reddit is a wonderful place. I had this same name back then. If you recognize this, PM me. I was in my mid-20s. I had worked in my dream profession only to burn out and my wife forced me to quit. I was depressed and working a minimum wage job. I was drinking way too much and gaining weight like it was a full-time job. I started watching Weeds and noticed that the characters were all reading the same book. I bought a copy of Christopher Noxon's Rejuvenile. It was mostly useless, but I learned about adult kickball leagues. I loved kickball as a kid. I worked for about 2 years to get a local league rolling. I met some great people, 2 of whom I consider my best friends. I made connections that led to my current career. I lost 80 pounds, eventually started drinking a reasonable amount, and had a blast doing it. TLDR watching Weeds. The whole first half was a red herring for kickball. I wanted to hear how watching Weeds made your life better, then how awesome the book was. Laughed so hard at the mostly useless, but great story. During my first year of university one night I opted to not go out to the pub with the guys from my dorm. During the night upstairs were throwing a birthday party and they knocked on the door asking if I wanted to join them. While there I met someone who was looking for a housemate for the following year. We ended up getting a place to stay and through her I met her friends, one of which happened to be seeing someone who introduced me to my current partner of 8 years that I'm soon to marry. If I had gone out that night or opted not to go to that birthday party, I have no idea where I would be. How cute. That's truly a him type of story. Mine by way of my oldest son. He and a few Navy buddies decided to go to NYC in uniform for the Big Apple drop. Around midnight, he sees a beautiful blonde in a red dress at the same time she sees a handsome sailor. Turns out she, her cousin and their chaperone were from Spain, finishing up a 10-day visit to the US. Neither one spoke each other's language, so the chaperone helped them talk to each other until about 3 AM. The butterfly effect. The beautiful blonde wasn't even supposed to be in the bar my son was in. Their package tickets were fraudulent and they randomly went in somewhere for the new year. That beautiful blonde is now my daughter-in-law and the mother of my precious granddaughter. They all speak both English and Spanish. Whoa, a grandparent on Reddit. I already had my degree, but took an evening class at a local university, just for kicks. The instructor was really impressed with me, and happened to be the head of the program. She offered me a job teaching night classes at the university, and also steered me toward and helped me get a really incredible full-time job in the industry. During this time, her daughter and I became really close, and the daughter adopted me into her friend circle of amazing people. TLDR. I took a random class and came out of it with 2 amazing jobs and an awesome social life. Before taking the class, I was unemployed, depressed, and didn't know a single person in the state I had just moved to. One of the sweetest parts about stories like these is that something like this would have happened to you even had you not attended that particular class. The good things that happen in our lives are like fractally representations of who we are. This all happened because you're an awesome person and you deserve it. Me and my best friends at the time tried to get a bunch of our friends group out clubbing. Only 2 other people turned up, and that included a guy who I had a crush on at the time. Well, the 2 who turned up decided to drag us to a pub where another friend group they were part of was hanging out. And that's the story of how my crush introduced me to my boyfriend, who I've now been with for over 5 years. What a wingman. Being asked to do one job I'm unqualified for keeps leading to another. My mom got me a job as a restaurant hostess at 16. Now I'm part owner of a restaurant 13 years later with no investment on my part. Being the only food service person in the family, friends of family ask me to help them in different restaurants. Hostess to server to manager to general manager. Most people do it in one business, but I don't actually apply or seek these jobs. I'm just luckily falling backwards into them. I have trained myself on every job and I'm not sure what I'm doing. My whole life has been fake it till you make it. Welcome to being an adult. We're all just pretending like we know what we're doing. Seriously, not trying to be harsh at all. Most of us feel like you do. Tuesday evening. I'm a lazy student that was actually heading to bed when one of my best friends hit me up with a text asking me to come to our favorite bar. At the time it was a rule that you had to come if being asked, so I got out of bed and went down there. Skip a few hours ahead, I'm in the bar, chatting with my friend. This cute curly haired girl comes up to us out of nowhere, asking us if one of us wants to dance. We decide to do rock, paper, scissors for who should go. The loser should go. She didn't notice us saying that. Luckily, I lost. Skip 15 years ahead. Here I am, living in a nice house. 3 kids, one of them sadly not here anymore. But that's another story. Another butterfly effect, and a cute curly haired woman as my wife. Life man. Curly headed cutie I can turn into my wife. My dad, from Spain, told me the story of how he met my mom, from Sweden, on the beach in Spain when she was a foreign exchange student and got invited to her party. My dad and a friend went to the party in the evening and stayed only for a little while before leaving. As they were driving back they stopped at a red light and my dad just thought to himself, I have to go back to the party. I have to see her again, and he did, and 30 years later my older sister, me, my younger brother and my sister's kids all exist because he went back to the party. deciding to go to a dance that was being put on by the nerdy clubs at my university. I hit it off really well with a girl there, and after hanging out together quite a bit, we eventually started dating. I had basically no friends in college before meeting her, and I made quite a few friends through her. That relationship ended up being very problematic and she was pretty manipulative at times, so we broke up 6 months later. But not before a friend I made through her got me a job at an escape room. There I met my current girlfriend, who was a huge inspiration for me to apply to graduate school. My current relationship, several lifelong friendships, and my career track can all be traced to deciding to go to that dance. Fruit from a poison tree isn't always bad. Even though it did lead to a pretty bad relationship, it also led to everything else, and my life is in a pretty good place right now. Sometimes the nastiest crap can be good manure. I was supposed to be adopted at birth. By a narrow margin my family decided I should stay with my mentally ill, alcoholic mother and her abusive senile mother. One decision. I used to be a labor nurse. I was involved in several deliveries where the baby was supposed to be adopted but the family raised heck and made the mom change their mind. I've always wondered what happened to these babies. There's a stigma about adoption for some older people. I've never understood it. I'm sorry. I was driving to a Grateful Dead concert in 1980 that was about 350 miles from home. I picked up a hitchhiker about halfway and it turned out that he was going to the same show. We were really early and he told me that he'd met some women from the town the show was in about 2 weeks previously and that they had his ticket. He asked me to take him to their house and that perhaps they could get me a ticket as well. I wasn't worried about scoring a ticket in 1980. It had been my experience that tickets were always available at the door, but I took him there anyway. We got to the house and that's when I discovered that the venue was only 2,700 seats and was sold out. Luckily my new friends scored me a ticket. TLDR. Scored a concert ticket. Oh yeah, I guess that's also how I met my wife. This sounds corny and fake but I swear this happened. I moved away to college and was enrolled in one of those University 101 classes, where they teach you how to college effectively. Every freshman has to take it. First day of this class rolls around and this girl walks in and sits down. She's the most beautiful human being I've ever seen in my life. Of course she had a boyfriend and was way out of my league, so I just silently was in love with her for the whole semester. Fast forward to the summer before my senior year. I still think about this girl all the time. I had a dream about her one night, and the next day, one of her friends, who I know lives with her because I am a creep, invites me over to their house to play Edward 40 Hands. I had no interest in this girl who invited me over, and I thought that my dream girl was still in a relationship. But something told me that having this dream about her the night before was a sign that I should just go over there and get drunk. Apparently she had been single for a while and had also actually had a crush on me the whole time we were at school, and her friend invited me over to set us up. One dumb pickup line later and I had her number. We now are in our mid-20s living together with our puppy, and I think I'm going to pop the question in the soon. This has got to be the first time in the history of mankind that Edward 40 Hands ended in something good happening. There's a guy that I used to know. He was the brother of a friend who I grew to know, care about, share laughs and tears with, and generally was a good influence on me. I liked him a lot, because he reminded me of me. If you've ever seen the movie Sliding Doors, where one version of her makes the train and the other does not, that's what he and I were like. I was the one that, through some sheer dumb luck, had spread my wings a little, experienced things, tried things, done things. Here he was, had never had a girlfriend, never had sex, never been to a steakhouse, and it was something that bothered him and his family too. We decided for his 22nd birthday, we would take him out to experience things, and help him find his path. He'd really live life, he'd enjoy a proper steak, he'd know the loving embrace of a woman, and generally give him a year of trying new everything. Then he went to see a doctor about his cough. Ends up he had a very aggressive testicular cancer. From diagnosis to grave, 6 weeks. I've been to a few funerals to bury friends, but his was the hardest. It was 10 years ago and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was gutted, more so than someone who didn't know him that well should have been, because I knew that it could just as easily have been me. I resolved there and then to live the life that he had been denied. Applied for a Hail Mary job at Microsoft. Got the job. It led on to bigger and better things. I also used a ton of my resources to change the world as much as I could, including working closely with a good friend of mine to launch a frick cancer cycling team which has since raised over $1 million and has gone from highly experimental to nearing medical approval needs to become a permanent and viable treatment in cancer for children. I shared this story most recently with a really great friend of mine who asked for help moving, then suddenly cancelled. It ended up that he had surgery to remove a cancerous testicular growth that day. He hadn't realized that every day I wake up and try so goddamn hard in my life to make the world a better place was because of someone who was just like me died back then and never got that chance. I'll keep doing that until I die, in honor and memory of him. Rip Gavin K. September 1985 to January 2008. You inspired me to be so much more than I was. You are an awesome person. Unfortunately, you just told me the plot of Sliding Doors, though I had never seen it, remarkably similar to my short story that I thought was a kick-ass original creation. Oh well, you still rock. When I was in middle school, I found myself falling into an eating disorder and already heavily depressed and self-harming. I went to counseling for the first time only to be told my problems couldn't be real or even considered an issue because I was fat. As a middle schooler this crushed me and I never went back to get help until years later. I went through really dark periods and have physical lasting effects from bulimia and suicide attempts. But because of how that counselor made me feel it inspired me to become a counselor so no child ever feels that pain or hurt again and only receives support. Child mental health services lack so much in my country and I want to do so much to help. I'm currently in college getting my social work degree and because at one event I never would have become the empathetic person I am today. I never would have cared so much to help others without her. So frick you Carolyn, my first counselor, but also thank you for inspiring me to do what you failed to. Seriously, frick Carolyn, but go you. I was driving home to Missouri from New York and got pulled over in Ohio at about 2 AM. I had just smoked a spliff in the car, and about 5 minutes prior I had pulled off to rail some Molly, both of which I had a pretty decent amount of in the car. The cop asked me if I knew why he pulled me over, told me I was speeding and he had me clocked at 89 in a 70, but I knew I had been going much faster than that. Gave him my license and registration. He went to his car, came back, gave me a ticket for speeding and left, which as far as I was concerned was a supreme stroke of luck. Fast forward 2 weeks, I had spent another weekend in New York, but this time I flew. I got very drunk, blacked out, missed my flight home, and paid an exorbitant amount of money to get on another flight so I could be at work the next day. I was driving to work Monday morning and was having very intense cravings for C, which I had a pretty rough problem with. It was so bad I couldn't even drive and had to pull over to recollect myself. I was hating myself because I couldn't stop using, no matter how much I wanted to stop. So I looked up Narcotics Anonymous meetings that night. As I pulled up to work, I remembered my speeding ticket. I looked to see when it was due, which I figured would be a while, but the date was set for Wednesday. My boss recommended a great lawyer and called him up, and he said he'd get me in that afternoon. This guy was way out of my way and usual stomping grounds, but I needed to do something so I went out to meet him. After I met him I decided I'd just go to a meeting out that way, since it didn't really make sense for me to drive out of my way again to do that. So that night I went to my first LA meeting, in an area I never would have gone to had I not needed to meet the lawyer. And here we are, 2 years and 3 months later, still clean, and still going to that same meeting every Monday night. Congrats on being clean. That's hard as heck, man. I'm sure it's not much, but this random internet gal is proud of you. I have my current career job because someone else stole Twinkies from the hostess production line. I was working a security job as a supervisor and I left because I got a better job. They replaced me, of course. After a few months, I got laid off. So to get a quick job I went back to Ask to Work Any Post. As I got there, My replacement was being fired because when he visited our guards at the hostess client, he took product from the production floor. We were allowed to eat any product put out for us in the break area, but he walked onto the floor and took boxes of product. He was caught, so he was fired. I happened to show up looking for a job the moment my old job opened up, so I was hired back. For my new first assignment each day, I drove 20 miles to a site and escorted a manager across the street to a bank with the day's deposits. Eventually, the manager told me about an entry-level management opening at his company and I easily got the job with his reference. That was 22 years ago and I still work for the company. When I was in high school, my friend decided to take advantage of a program that lets Jewish kids take a trip to Israel for free. While he was there, he met a girl and hooked up with her. They kept in contact after returning to the US, and since they lived in cities only a couple of hours away from each other, they would sometimes visit each other. They brought our friend groups together, and to make a long story short, that's how I met my wife. And kids, that's how I met your mother. Going on a date with a guy even though I was tired and wanted to cancel. We got along great and started dating. He ended up helping me escape an abusive home situation, and 5 years later, I'm free and happy. We broke up eventually, but I shudder to think what my life would be if I didn't have his support. After a night out with my best friend, we both drove home, but he never made it. He was a photographer, and in memory of him I put a photo of me and my dog that he took as my MySpace profile picture. A girl liked the photo of my dog and messaged me because of it. We started dating and then had a kid. We now have 2 children and are married. A friend of mine suggested we run a 5k together. Not one of those real 5ks, but one of those glow runs or whatever. That friend gets sick, and he lets another friend take his spot. That friend is much more friendly to strangers, so at the 5k, she becomes friends with random drunk women. Yup, a very fake 5k. Those drunk women tell her to watch Gilmore Girls. For whatever reason, my friend and I end up watching the show, and I, a first-gen college student that went to a high school where 60% of students end up going to community college, decide to apply to Yale because Rory Gilmore seemed to be having a fun time, and I got in. Thanks, Rory Gilmore. That's awesome. Yay, Gilmore Girls. I walked into a room looking for a small no-name Christian campus organization I had never heard of. It's actually fairly largely known, just not where I'm from, but a friend from a different school told me to go to. I walk in and was about to turn around as only 10 people were in the room. Bill, a senior, I was a freshman, walked over to me and introduced himself, invited me to sit with him, and then introduced me to the pastor and the 2 other freshmen in the group. The pastor then within the week planned a camping trip because he learned I loved camping. That one friendly face led to saving me from loneliness and depression, brought me back from dropping out of school a year later, and led to an internship for 2 years after graduation. That internship led to a near full ride to grad school, where I plan on using that degree to be a pastor on a college campus with my now wife, who I met in this campus organization. TLDR, a friendly hello led to free grad school. I'm an atheist myself, but I get happy when I see something like this. I might not believe in God, but I believe some churches can bring people together and make their lives better. I had no idea where I wanted to go to college, and my friend told me I should apply for a scholarship to this one school. I said sure, what the heck. My dad would love to not have to pay. I went to apply, but I had missed the deadline. I freaked and didn't want my parents to get on my case about it, so I literally googled scholarship for the thing I had gotten. Don't wanna specify if it sounds braggy, and the first result was the school I go to now. I'm from a completely different state that's nowhere near this school, and I thought I was just applying to make my parents happy, but I visited and fell in love. Pretty much everything that happens from here on out is a result of that Google search and my forgetting to apply on time. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.